Hey everyone, today I'm sharing the powerful story of Kai, a man who's been on a 2-year spiritual journey seeking clarity and truth. After deep moments of faith and doubt, he turned to psychedelics hoping to find meaning, and what followed was a life-changing experience that challenged everything he knew about himself, faith, and God. But first things first, if you enjoy the content, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and click that notification bell to stay updated. Alright, let's dive into this life-altering experience. Hey, so let me introduce myself. My name is Kai. I want to talk about a pivotal experience I had with mushrooms, which came after spending a couple of years walking my spiritual path. To give you some context, I've been on this journey of faith for around 2.5 years. When I first found my connection with God, I threw myself into sharing the gospel, eager to spread the message. It was exhilarating and all-consuming. Throughout those 2.5 years, I witnessed things that felt miraculous, offered prophecies, and even experienced casting out demons. Every day, I felt myself growing closer to God and embracing the richness of the gospel. But soon enough, I couldn't ignore the impact all of this was having on other parts of my life. My jobs, friendships, and family relationships started experiencing some strain. It was tough. I found myself facing a critical point filled with doubts. Meeting a variety of people throughout this journey opened my eyes to a wide array of beliefs. Coming from a pretty open-minded background, I naturally gravitated toward New Age ideas, which taught me to see things from different angles. Yet somewhere along the way, my feelings about Jesus began to battle within me. I absolutely recognized him as real and powerful, but questions started nagging at me. Is he merely my king? Could there be other paths out there? It felt a bit pretentious to declare others wrong when I was wrestling with uncertainties of my own. I reached a moment where I craved undeniable certainty about my faith. The idea of standing firm for my beliefs, even to the point of sacrificing my life, was enticing. I just needed to be sure. Though God had revealed himself to me in significant ways, I began to wonder if I fully grasped the depth of that relationship. It dawned on me that not everyone experiences God in the same way I had. I met people who fervently prayed and called on Jesus yet got lost in their own struggles. It was disheartening to realize that their experiences didn't mirror my own. Amid all this introspection, I found myself longing for clarity and a deeper understanding of my relationship with God. That's when I made the decision to try mushrooms, definitely a bold step. Suddenly, my faith was put to the test in a completely new light. It's one thing to go through the motions at church on Sundays, but when life starts throwing challenges your way, that's when you truly begin to see what you really believe. Imagine having what you think is a strong foundation, only to discover cracks when you really put it to the test. There was a time in my life when I was genuinely trying to weave my faith into my day-to-day experiences, eager to share my beliefs with those around me. One afternoon, while scrolling through the internet, I stumbled upon an intriguing video. It delved into this group of early Christians who incorporated mushrooms into their spiritual practices. I thought to myself, this is crazy, and it immediately drew me in. In my early explorations, I had always seen psychedelics, like mushrooms and acid, as being completely different from typical recreational drugs. They felt more like a kind of medicine, a gateway to self-discovery. These substances revealed truths, some of which about myself still stick with me today. But here's the twist. They offered enough clarity to spark my curiosity, while lacing in a touch of deception that kept me anchored in the same place. Using psychedelics often opened my eyes to my shortcomings. Waves of guilt would hit me with thoughts along the lines of, I should be a better sibling, a better son, a better worker. It was a heavy load. Yet, intertwined with that guilt came insights that seemed profound at the time. Unfortunately, translating those realizations into meaningful action turned out to be a struggle, as if I were missing a crucial piece of the puzzle. Despite the confusion and difficulty in acting on those insights, my experiences left a lasting impression. A curiosity began to take root within me. I frequently caught myself pondering, what if this isn't as bad as it seems? What if there's something truly worthwhile here? That thought lingered for months, becoming more compelling with each passing day. I've always felt this urge to delve deeper into my beliefs, but it wasn't until recently that I decided to follow that feeling. For a stretch of time, I had what I can only describe as conversations with the divine. I know it sounds a bit out there, but I was making plans. I thought, all right, I'm going to try psychedelics again. During that phase, my spiritual awareness felt amplified. I was attuned to so much more than before. I kept thinking, if I'm going to journey into the spirit world, I need to seek out the hidden truths. My goal was all about separating fact from fiction and returning with knowledge to share with those caught up in misunderstandings. I was sincere in my intentions. I wasn't looking to escape reality or just to get high. I genuinely wanted to uncover wisdom. For a long time, I've been searching for a solid foundation for discussing my faith. It's crucial to know the bigger picture behind our beliefs, don't you think? I often found myself reflecting on how Paul spread his message. He really connected with people, becoming relatable to everyone he met. That's the kind of understanding I wanted for myself, to deepen my convictions. This thought nagged at me for months. Then one night, I ended up at a friend's place in Sedona, New Mexico. It was a familiar setting. We often collaborated on music. My friend was quite the character, into selling all sorts of things, including some less than legal stuff. I was there to focus on recording, trying to keep my attention on the music and tune out the chaos around us. But that night, things took a surprising turn. Just as I was about to lay down a track, he casually spilled a whole bag of mushrooms on his bed, right in front of me. Suddenly, I found myself at a crossroads, grappling with this urge for clarity while watching the situation unfold. Looking back, I can see how far I've come. In my past, I battled addiction to heroin, but thankfully, I managed to break those chains. I know firsthand the devastation addiction brings. Then there was my choice to give up porn. It was the dark cloud surrounding it that ultimately pushed me away. Realizing its true impact was eye-opening. It simply didn't hold any allure for me anymore. When it comes to psychedelics, my feelings were more complicated. I had this nagging fear lurking beneath the surface. It wasn't a plain fear of trying them, but more of an uncertainty about why I felt that way. Ironically, that apprehension pulled me in, compelling me to face it head-on. I had a friend there, casually nudging me along. He wasn't pushy, but you could tell he was gently bending my ear. So I thought, why not? This was my chance. I took a bite of a chocolate piece containing an eighth of something. It's worth noting, this wasn't my first dance with psychedelics. I've had a lengthy history with substances like mushrooms, acid, and DMT. Over 100 experiences, if I'm being honest. I generally managed them well and had never encountered a bad trip. There were times I even carried on tasks while on acid, keeping a level head in what could be stressful or risky moments. And so I got comfortable, mentally preparing to ride the wave of this experience. I told myself to keep a positive outlook. It was going to be an adventure. You know that feeling when you're about to embark on an adventure? It's a familiar kind of unease that tingles through you, almost like anticipation brewing. I was fully engaged in that moment, welcoming whatever was coming next. There was one particular night where everything felt a bit too much, and I decided I needed a break from reality. Why not make some music, I thought. That would help clear my head. So I dove into the rhythm, letting the bass carry me away. About 20 minutes in, I felt great, bordering on euphoric. Just then, my buddy suggested we check out a bar not too far away. I looked at him, confused. Are you serious? Now? Staying in my groove was essential, so I politely turned him down. Eventually, he chose to head out. That's when everything took a turn. When he stepped outside, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. Suddenly I was alone, and an uneasy sensation wrapped around me like a cloak. It dawned on me then, I had unwittingly walked right into something uncomfortable. It felt as if the very essence of the room became heavy with an unsettling presence, my instincts firing up, warning me that something was off. I told myself I wouldn't let this dampen my mood. I kept trying to stay positive, but reality was stubborn. It felt like shadows were infiltrating the space, each one more daunting than the last, tightening around me. My heartbeat quickened, and the pressure in my chest suffocated me. Still, I refused to surrender. You can get through this, Kai, I reassured myself as I made my way to the bathroom, eager to shake off the unease. Looking into the mirror, I forced a smile. Life is great. You're healthy. A laugh escaped me as I tried to convince myself there was no chance I could be in real danger from mushrooms or anything like that. Just overthinking, I told myself. Out of nowhere, it felt like a voice broke through my thoughts, clear as a bell. Who says I can't stop your heart whenever I want? The words hit me hard, sinking deep and making me confront the reality of the situation. In that moment of clarity, I felt a surge of something ominous swirling in the air. It was overwhelming, and without thinking, I started to pray. An hour into what I believed was just a casual gathering, I suddenly realized I had stepped into a nightmare. A wave of panic crashed over me, and I couldn't help but think, what on earth did I get myself into? I found myself pleading for relief, whispering, "Please, God, forgive me." The moment I paused, I felt an overwhelming heaviness creeping in, like a shadow suffocating me. It was hard to breathe, like I was being crushed from all sides. Let me give you some context. A typical trip on mushrooms can stretch out for 5 to 7 hours, depending on how much you've taken. I thought I had gone for a pretty standard dose, nothing too extreme compared to some of the higher amounts I had tried previously. Reality hit me hard. I felt trapped in this terrifying scenario, as if death had encircled me. My mind raced, searching for someone to reach out to, but then came the sobering thought, who could I really call right now? A lawyer wouldn't exactly help. Phoning my parents was out of the question, and there was no way I could talk to my pastor. The weight of my mistake bore down on me. This was way more serious than just a simple error. It felt like I had invited darkness in. The air grew thick, and everything around me felt amplified. My wife was out enjoying dinner with friends. Maybe if I could just get away from this setting, it would help. I dialed her number, breathlessly saying, "You need to come get me." When she finally rolled up about 20 or 30 minutes later, I was teetering on the edge of a meltdown. As the shadows seemed to close in tighter, it felt like I was suffocating. I was barely holding it together when she arrived. There was a distinct moment, I can't forget it, when I felt myself drifting away from my body. You know that strange feeling when you're almost slipping into unconsciousness? That was me, being pulled into this dark nothingness. All I could think about was how much it felt like dying. I was terrified and gasping for air. In that chaos, the only thing that brought me any sense of calm was prayer. I kept urging Lyra, "Please, just pray for me. I can't explain it, but I really need your prayers." The drive back home was an emotional roller coaster. I could feel her fear. She was clearly worried. I was clutching to any sliver of reality, but each time I caught a break, another wave would crash over me, dragging me back down. It was like living in a constant battle between my body and this void pulling me under. When I finally staggered into my house, things took an even darker turn. I made it to my bedroom, only to collapse onto the floor. Imagine being in a place where the spirit world wraps around you, leaving you feeling completely lost. At first, it was like I was adrift in this endless black emptiness. Then, out of nowhere, visions began to emerge. And just like that, I found myself cradled in the palm of an enormous hand. The sensation of helplessness washed over me. It felt like I had no control. The gravity of that realization struck me hard. I finally understood the frightening essence of those biblical words. Falling into the hands of the living God isn't just alarming. It's an incredibly deep sense of powerlessness that's tough to put into words. In that surreal state, my surroundings were jarringly different. On my right, a chaotic swarm of demons, maybe 20 or 30, moved like a storm. To my left, I caught a glimpse of heaven, though it was obscured by a fog, as if hidden beneath a delicate white veil. I could see bits of color and form, but the full splendor remained just out of reach. Below me loomed a dark, foreboding abyss that I instinctively recognized as hell. The mere thought of plunging into that darkness was terrifying. I knew if I fell, it would lead to my end. Caught in this unthinkable scenario, surrounded by these sinister beings, it felt as if I was right in the eye of a storm. Chaos swirled all around me. One particularly large demon rose above the rest and shouted, "We're tired of this kid. He keeps invading our territory and taking our people." In that moment, clarity descended upon me. The weight of my own misdeeds crashed over me like a tidal wave. What had I gotten myself into? Panic gripped me as though it had wrapped around my chest, making it hard to breathe. I was a witness to all this chaos unfolding before me, and it struck deep into my core with sheer terror. I felt an enormous pressure squeezing me, and I was on my knees begging for mercy. The stakes felt impossibly high. Returning to my physical body felt like a descent into death. I had to find a way back and fight for my place in this spiritual struggle. Meanwhile, my wife, bless her heart, was trying to pull me back into reality. "What's happening? Please, talk to me," she urged, but giving her an answer was beyond me. I was ensnared in this overwhelming ordeal. Desperately, I managed to convey, "You don't get it. I can't stay here right now. I need you to pray for me." I gasped, struggling to catch my breath as this heavy weight held me immobile, making time feel like it had come to a standstill. For what seemed like an eternity, I remained ensnared in this terrifying limbo, where conversations floated around me, but their meanings were lost, just out of reach. Imagine being in a situation that feels like a trial, but this courtroom is in the sky, and I'm the one being accused. Each thump of my heart dragged me down further into an abyss of fear. It was as if my very essence was crumbling. My insides felt like they were wilting, and I was losing my grip on life. No matter how much water I tried to drink, it never seemed to satisfy my thirst. I understood then that escaping this darkness might lead me into something even scarier, like falling into an endless void of hopelessness. The overwhelming sense of helplessness wrapped around me like a heavy blanket. I felt cornered with no way to defend myself. They were there to seek retribution for my wrongdoings, and I had no power to fight back. The anticipation of what lay ahead loomed over me like a shadow I couldn't shake. Let me share a challenging moment from my life that felt like it could spell my doom. I was completely drained, as if I were in an unyielding struggle. I was so close to surrendering, and deep inside my heart, I was begging for forgiveness. "God, forgive me," I found myself murmuring, fully aware of the burden my choices carried. It felt like my energy had been completely sapped, leaving me feeling utterly lifeless. There's a phrase from a psalm that sticks with me: "In your hand, I have been spent." That perfectly captured my feelings of emptiness. Eventually, after what seemed like forever, I reached a moment of surrender, a point where I relinquished control. "Jesus," I declared, "you are my Savior." In that instant, I let everything go, feeling myself fade away. Yet, just when I thought I was lost, a flicker of determination ignited within me. There was a gentle whisper nudging me, reminding me that my journey wasn't over yet. I felt a divine presence, a hand giving me breath, grounding me in that moment. As I lay there, teetering on the edge of existence, I began to realize something incredible. I was being gifted with breaths again and again. It's hard to describe, but I could feel God's presence, granting me each breath as a reprieve. I would take a breath, desperate for life, only for it to feel like it was slipping away once more, suffocating me in the process. Again and again, I was caught in this painful loop of near death and gasping for air. Just when I thought it couldn't get any more excruciating, a clear thought struck me. I recognized the importance of being there for my family, for those I cherished, and for the purpose I felt called to pursue. As I internalized that longing, the weight of despair began to lift, allowing a glimmer of hope to seep in. Out of nowhere, I sensed something nearby, a gathering of 6 or 7 spirits, maybe angels or saints, reaching out with their prayers. Suddenly, hope surged back into my heart, pushing away the fear that had held me captive for such a long time. A shadow shaped like a cross appeared in front of me, illuminating a path I thought I had long lost. That was the moment it hit me. Faith and love really do have the power to breathe life into our darkest moments. There was this surreal experience where I found myself aware of both the light above and the darkness lurking nearby. It felt as if I was caught in a kind of cosmic tug-of-war. Then everything changed. The energy in the air shifted, and all those heavenly gazes locked onto that shadow of a cross. It felt like God had been triggered by that image, as if an old memory had resurfaced within him. In that instant, an incredible weight lifted off my shoulders. Just then, I turned to see Jesus walking toward me from the divine realm. He approached me, wrapped his arm around me, and said, "He belongs to me. This one is mine." The authority in his voice was unmistakable, It felt like the universe had aligned perfectly with his words. And just like that, I was back in my body. But what came next was far from easy. I went through this excruciating process of deliverance, and let me tell you, it was intense. I became violently ill. I actually filled 3 plastic shopping bags, feeling like I was expelling my very insides. The physical pain was something I had never encountered before, leaving me utterly drained, as though all my strength had been siphoned away. Yet suddenly, I found myself in the spiritual realm again. This time it was heaven. Even though the full beauty of it wasn't completely revealed to me, there were glimpses that took my breath away. As I stepped forward, who did I see waiting for me? Jesus. He looked at me with that contagious, radiant smile and said, "Maybe we shouldn't do that again, bro." That moment really resonated with me. Jesus' relaxed demeanor felt incredibly comforting, as if he was completely unbothered by everything I had just endured. He appeared genuinely glad to see me, almost proud, with eyes shining with affection. It struck me then that amid all the turmoil, I hadn't been left behind. He made it unmistakably clear that no matter how low I felt, he was always right beside me. However, there was a stark contrast in the air. I couldn't shake the feeling that the heavenly beings looked at me with disappointment. While I felt overwhelmed by shame and condemnation, here was Jesus, proud as could be, introducing me to everyone around us, unfazed by the tumult I went through. Imagine being in a heavenly space. I felt a bit out of place, almost as if the angels were shaking their heads, conveying, "This kid." It was a mix of heaviness and the comforting presence of Jesus that surrounded me. It all began when a wave of shame hit me, and then a powerful verse came to mind. "For whom do I have in heaven besides you, and who do I desire on earth more than you?" It resonated deeply. Even when I stumbled, it dawned on me that God is my unwavering strength. He is my forever portion. In that moment, everything clicked. Jesus really does fulfill our every need, and thanks to him, heaven stands with us. As I took in my surroundings, I noticed the different dimensions, each one veiled in glories that seemed to rise like a magnificent tower. I felt I had ascended to quite an impressive level, just shy of a couple more realms above. Yet, beneath that awe, lurked an overwhelming feeling of not belonging there. I couldn't shake off the memories of the preceding moments, repeating to myself, "I don't belong here." In desperation, I called out for God, yearning to worship without the pressure to speak. Suddenly, I felt myself being pulled back down, landing at the lowest point of heaven. There I was, humbled on my knees, utterly focused on worshiping God. All I could say was, "Hallelujah," over and over. With each breath, a reminder echoed within me that my being was a gift from God, meant to uplift him. "Hallelujah, hallelujah," echoed from my lips, and I feared stopping because it felt essential. In my prayers, I whispered, "Jesus, let me just worship, hold back the words." The notion that I might never preach again haunted me. I felt unworthy to represent him, longing only to remain in that worshipful place. After some time, Jesus reappeared to me. The way we communicated was extraordinary, like telepathy, where understanding flowed effortlessly. I felt an intense connection to the Father, and in that instant, everything became crystal clear. You know, it was a remarkable experience that shifted my self-perception entirely. After battling with heaviness and guilt, clarity washed over me. It felt as though Jesus stood right beside me, whispering, "I forgive you, just let it all go." Can you imagine that feeling? It was as if a tremendous burden had been lifted from my shoulders. It hit me that I could embrace a new beginning, focus on the present, and let go of the past. Reflecting on that first moment brings back a wave of clarity. I felt liberated and confident. It honestly felt like I could sense a divine presence beside me, offering comfort and guiding me through a transcendent experience. In that instant, I recognized, I am loved and forgiven, and how could I possibly keep that to myself? It was truly a revelation. Still, a certain heaviness lingered deep within me. As I wrestled with that feeling, I began to uncover truths I had longed to grasp. It was as if I was gliding through a heavenly realm, surrounded by its incredible beauty. The intensity of it all was a whirlwind, so fast and electric that I struggled to find the words to capture it. Each new revelation swept over me, bringing waves of joy and understanding that I could hardly keep up with. At one point, I found myself exclaiming, "Wait, this is too intense!" I couldn't shake the thought that some experiences are simply too sacred to divulge. The excitement surged within me to the point where I felt like I was on the verge of overflowing. The joy was exquisite, but I feared that one more insight could be too much for me to bear. Then, a sobering thought struck. I don't deserve this. Suddenly, I recognized how I had constructed my own version of something flawed, trying to reach divine understanding while carrying all my imperfections. Yet there I was, soaking in God's goodness, all the desires of my heart unfolding before me, despite the chaotic journey that led to this point. It was truly transformative. With all these profound insights crashing over me, I just wished for it to slow down. At one juncture, I even found myself begging to return to Earth. It became clear to me that existing is a safeguard in its own right. The weight of these truths felt nearly unbearable, and I started to see the importance of maintaining a balance between understanding and living here on Earth. If only people could grasp what lies beyond our world, it might genuinely terrify them. Imagine individuals living in darkness, completely unaware they've spent their lives amidst torment akin to a hellish existence. It sends chills down my spine. For a long time, this realization kept me from drowning in despair. So there I was, crying out, "God, please bring me back to my body. I can't take this anymore. I'm overwhelmed." In the midst of this chaotic journey, it felt as if God was illuminating countless truths for me. Some memories faded, but many resonated, deep insights that I often find challenging to express. I found myself in a state that felt beyond mere words. Slowly, I began to reconnect with my physical body. Breathing came easier, and I started to take in my surroundings, inching back towards a sense of normalcy. That intense feeling was finally subsiding. It was a relief to finally grasp a sense of peace and joy that I desperately craved. To be honest, for the next 3 days, I was pretty much in shock. I made a promise to myself. I wouldn't step into preaching again, not at that moment anyway. But then, I felt a gentle reminder from God nudging me, pulling me back to the purpose He set for me. Deep down, I was still convinced that speaking was off the table for me. One major insight from all this was understanding that every breath we take is a reminder of God's mercy. It's quite astounding to think that He intentionally gives us each breath. Another pivotal realization revolved around Jesus' forgiveness. It might come off as strange, but He truly stands out from anyone else. His love is so profound that it's hard to articulate. I still remember the powerful moment when He looked at me. It was as if all my wrongs vanished in that instant, leaving only a pure connection anchored in love. When I finally made my way back, everything started to make sense. Clarity washed over me about what I had gone through. I learned that darkness often wears many disguises, much like how evil can present itself as something attractive. Looking back on my journey with psychedelics, I now recognize how blindly I was opening doors to the spiritual realm. In my high school days, I dabbled with psychedelics, unaware of the deeper implications. For a lot of folks, it was just another fun party experience, and I was swept up in that atmosphere. However, I was unwittingly stepping into a world that my spirit wasn't ready to face. What really unsettled me was the fact that I encountered sinister forces during those trips, often disguised as friendly beings. Initially, these otherworldly entities shared wisdom that felt comforting. But it was all a trap, just enough truth to reel you in while hiding an underlying hook that keeps you connected to something off-kilter. No matter where I ended up while under those influences, the devil didn't mind. I was still ensnared. Whether the chains were short or long, the crucial issue was that I was still bound. Looking back on my past, I can't help but notice how it was like living in a world of deception. It's not unlike taking a bite from that proverbial tree of good and evil. But then I think about my later experiences with the divine, and that's a whole different story. I've had moments where I really connected with God, and let me tell you, it was genuinely uplifting. When you come to that place through prayer, fasting, and a humble heart, everything just clicks into place. You feel joy and peace wash over you without any of the typical hang-ups that come along otherwise. On the flip side, with psychedelics, there's always something lingering afterward. I can't shake the feeling that the high comes with a side of anxiety, nausea, or just a weird sense of discomfort. It doesn't matter how incredible the experience seemed at the time. there was always that nagging feeling that it was a bit dirty. Now that I reflect on it, every psychedelic adventure came with a residue that screamed not pure. It's funny, before I ever dabbled in psychedelics, I was full of fear about them. That fear, oddly enough, spurred me to jump right into those experiences. So what happened to that fear? Honestly, it's gone. I'll never forget the moment I witnessed a friend go through something that felt like pure agony. At that point, it hit me that I had to learn the lesson, even if it was hard. I've always been the person who dives into risky situations, knowing they could go south. Looking back, I genuinely feel like if I tried psychedelics again, it might lead me to a breaking point. Like I've been to that dark courtroom before, and there's no chance I want to step back in those shoes again. Now consider the people who support friends or loved ones while they're under the influence of psychedelics. It's so important for them to realize that these moments are incredibly real for the person experiencing them. They can have profound impacts, and understanding that is crucial. Think about it. If I were to chat with someone about spirituality and they mentioned a run-in with aliens, would it make sense for me to dismiss their experience? Absolutely not. We often walk into these discussions with our own biases, acting like we hold the ultimate truth. Respecting what others go through can really bring us together, even when we might not see eye to eye on their experiences. It's fascinating how some folks tend to dismiss what others face, almost as if their truths aren't valid. One crucial point we must emphasize is that every person's path is completely valid. In tough moments, I often find myself turning to my faith, calling on Jesus for insight. The suggestion of trying mushrooms to find clarity? Not something I'd advocate, yet I sort of understand where that thought comes from. It's about seeking a greater presence in your life, isn't it? Looking back on my own experiences, it has truly hit me that our best hope is to guide others toward Jesus, pray for their understanding, and ask for His light to shine through their struggles. Reflecting on everything, I have a lot to offer, especially for those who resonate with Christ, but carry burdens of guilt or shame. I want to emphasize that God's compassion and love are far beyond what we often imagine. Even now, I'm still discovering just how profound His goodness is. After a significant moment in my life, the realization dawned on me. Jesus never feels anger towards me. Instead, He continually brings life, hope, and truth into my being. When I think back, I recognize the weight of this realization, especially as I read Zechariah 3:1. There I was, wrapped in doubt and accusation, yet God stepped in and affirmed my innocence, reminding me that I belonged to Him. I might not have looked like royalty in that instant, but that's when He welcomed me as His child. Switching topics a bit, I can't help but notice how the New Age scene has left many individuals feeling adrift and bewildered. With the rising popularity of psychedelics, microdosing, and retreats, it's important to know these routes might lead to delusions instead of true awakening. I remember talking about my own experiences on Clubhouse, where a lot of folks were obsessed with mushrooms. One guy actually suggested that I just needed to take more to really get it, and I was stunned. How could ingesting more of something lead to clarity? This journey is about uncovering real truths rather than chasing after whims, and that's where genuine value lies. I can't help but ponder the notion that more mushrooms equate to more healing. It's just so bewildering. Seriously, how can that logic even be justified? You know, it can be really hard to wrap your head around this idea. The thought that the creator of everything wants us to connect with Him by consuming mushrooms found in cow manure or growing them ourselves. What about the folks who can't easily get their hands on that kind of stuff? Are they just destined to miss out on a divine experience? When you break it down like that, it's honestly quite perplexing. The belief that you need psychedelics to touch something sacred seems pretty off when scrutinized. It often leads to endless discussions that go nowhere, and I've talked to people who've experimented with these substances, and they usually appear a bit adrift. Their insights are more about feelings, like, I experienced this or I sensed that. Now, I'm not here to judge anyone. I've journeyed through my own doubts and confusion, yet I've come to a solid conclusion, almost absolutely certain, that such experiences can lead you astray. They don't offer the clarity you might expect. If you're really on a quest for truth, why not reach out to Jesus in those moments? Accept him as your Lord because he is truly sovereign. I can assure you, chasing those altered states won't give you the enlightenment you're after. Instead, they'll leave you tangled in uncertainty. That's the heart of the matter right there.